There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Nikia Phoenix podcast, but specifically Reclaiming with Joe and Nikia. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are joined by Dr. Tiffany Shelton Mariolle. Oh my goodness. Tiffany, it's so wonderful to have you.
Very, very happy to be here, definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. You are a psychologist, author, and entrepreneur, and you have been helping me personally since, for the past 6 years, I believe. I think that we first met at an event where you were leading us in yoga and meditation. And then I invited you onto our panel discussion at Black Girl Beautiful, and everything that you do, everything that you pour your heart into, from your books to your manifestation practices to the meditations that you've done previously, it's all incredibly uplifting, and we're so incredibly thankful to have you today.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. That makes me so, so happy to hear. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I love what you ladies are doing here as well on the podcast. And obviously, I'm a big fan of everything you've done beforehand. So I'm very, very excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All this wonderful female energy. Yes.
So Joe and I just got done recording a podcast a few days ago, and we had to take a little bit of a break from doing this podcast for mental and emotional reasons, right, Joe?
Yeah, definitely. The kind of re-triggering of certain emotions, especially when we're digging in as deep as we were. Definitely something that I personally want to, talk to you about. So I know that you talk about it in your books. So excited.
Yeah. I was saying to Nikia beforehand, and I'll just repeat it, of how important the grounding work is, and the grounding tools, I guess is a better phrase to say, when doing this kind of work, even when working with survivors and in therapy, before we go to talking about any narratives of what they've been through, before we go through processing it all, we start with the grounding tools, because it's very important when you're in those conversations or doing that type of conscious work to have the tools to bring yourself back to the safety of the present moment and being able to really be grounded in the right here and the right now in order to look at some of that stuff. Because if we don't, then we have the risk of re-traumatizing ourselves at the very least. So yeah, I'm very happy to have that conversation because it's so important. And I don't think because this conversation is people don't talk about a lot, then that sort of deeper conversation about re-traumatizing isn't talked about a lot either. So it's very nice that you guys are talking about the full picture of sharing your story and doing this type of work for sure.
That re-traumatizing. I know that for self, I feel like I've done a lot of work to heal. And yet when I'm recounting my story, and there was a moment a month or so ago that I was recounting a memory, and I could physically feel myself back in that position. And it's like when you're in a pool and you're swimming, and then all of a sudden your anxiety kicks in and you forget that you know how to swim. And so you're grasping for the edge, you're grasping for a hand, grasping for help. And in that moment of recounting my story, I felt that anxiety coming up, and I had to realize you're not there anymore. You're fine.
Yeah. We kind of go to that part of our brain that's in survival mode, essentially. And, that's where that conscious work comes in. Bringing yourself back to to being able to bring in that other side of you that's also rational to help you kind of ground in the present moment. And I think, we want to share our stories as survivors. We want to help other women because that on the other side, there's all of these experiences of healing and freedom. And in that desire to help, we have to remember to continuously take care of ourselves as well. And that's a practice that goes along with the healing of many times women that are survivors of domestic violence emotionally take care of other people, right? And part of that healing is to not emotionally babysit and to really put your own, mask on, that airplane analogy, before you can help anyone else. And doing that in the way that you choose to help others, I think is a good reminder, because sometimes that just wanting to help and share your story and take the shame away from other folks, we might forget to continue protecting ourselves in that moment.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we were talking about just this in the last episode, but from our viewpoint, as a survivor victim viewpoint, about how important it is to, put that mask on yourself before you help others. Because I know that I've fallen into that, especially as of lately, which makes sense. So you say as emotional abuse, that's what we do. Because I definitely have been putting the mask on others before I put on myself. And then there I start to get re-triggered. I feel invincibly strong and ready to attack and to help, because I'm so adamant about not having anyone fall into the same hole that I fell into. That pain that I've been feeling in this last year has been something I'm like, I don't want anyone else to do. So I'm like savior mentality, trying to do all this. But then I find myself sometimes broken at the end of the day, exhausted. And so
what I would say to you, I think, is to take a look at those moments that you've kind of crossed that line and see if you can write down, like, what were the warning signs that you were getting to that place before you got there. So for you personally, what does it look like to feel re-traumatized and triggered? That way you can know when those signs start coming up next time, that's going to be your kind of cue to check in with yourself and say, okay, do I need to put a boundary up? Do I need to pause? Do I maybe need to change the subject, stop the whatever the case may be? But at least you can have like a kind of a picture of what it looks like to you, because it looks different to everyone. Yeah.
That's incredibly helpful. Those boundaries, establishing those boundaries, because for such a long time in that abusive relationship and abusive situation, your boundaries were constantly crossed. Those boundaries weren't respected, and it even became difficult for me to honor those boundaries for myself.
Yeah. I see that a lot with folks in the psychology world that have experienced trauma, because they have gone through so much and they've had to be so strong. They'll come into the first session and just start, first of all, they don't know me. This is their first time meeting me, and boundaries are kind of out the window. They're sharing everything because they're speaking from a detached sort of perspective. They're sharing their story as almost as if it's a movie, or it didn't happen to them. But then afterwards, there's this reverberation, like this rebound effect of talking about all those really traumatic experiences. So I always try to slow them down in that first time meeting them. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm protecting you. I know you want to share this story with me and tell me what you've been through so we can work on it and you can get about the healing. But I want to take a moment and notice how re-traumatizing it could be, but also how detached sometimes we can be in those experiences. And then we have to kind of deal with it later, the emotional kind of backlash. And so it just goes back to just being conscious of really how you are taking in. So like you were saying, Nikia, like, how's your body feeling? How's your breath when you're talking? How are your thoughts? Are you completely kind of detached, or can you take a moment and sit with maybe some stuff you're not noticing in the moment so you can take care of yourself.
Definitely. I've been detached, and when you were saying it's like you're watching a movie of your experience. Absolutely. I have felt it's been some years, however, when I'm replaying that movie in my head, I don't even it can be very much of a challenge for me to identify the two characters as myself.
Right. But I guess you had to do that to survive for so long. So it's kind of like you go back into that mode. And then the harder work now is to that integration, and kind of what you're doing, what you both are doing now is realizing that is you. Almost sometimes, have you ever heard that analogy of like folks that have an inner critic and they tell themselves, think about as if you are talking about your younger version of yourself, like put a picture of yourself. And it could be helpful to do that when you've gone through trauma as well, because I think as a survivor, you see yourself as that strong person. But if you were talking about like this, as if this happened to your daughter, or if you talked about it as like your inner child, that happened to your inner child, you might take it a little bit slower, and it might evoke more things to cause you to pause and maybe, sit with something a little bit deeper than you would as the survivor that had to go through all that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I am really resonating with this whole movie situation. Because, I mean, there's times where, I've talked to Nikia, and unfortunately, though I left my situation a year ago, so many things have dragged on from that relationship throughout this year that has been slowly like unfolding. And there's been times that I'm talking to the kid, she's like, this is your life. This is your real life. I'm like, this feels like a whole movie. Like, it's like, I was that girl? Nah. Oh my God. That's scary. Yeah.
But having empathy, and I'm so glad that you said that, Tiffany, because it is inner child work. You have a lot more compassion for yourself, and you have a lot more compassion for children. Honestly, Joe, you with your daughter, you are very careful and kind, and obviously because she's your daughter, that maternal instinct kicks in, and you're like, how can I wrap my arms around her and protect her? And so I hear what you're saying, Tiffany, that we have to do that same thing for ourselves.
For ourselves, yeah. And that's part of the journey and the healing process. The book I did on mindful self-compassion, I talked about it in mind, body, and spirit, in the sense that we have to take care of ourselves in all those ways. And the spiritual piece is that emotional piece of taking care of ourselves. And that compassion and like you said, empathy, even when you were saying, well, I don't know, what was the connotation when you were saying I was that
because
girl?
It's kind of like because I'm out of it now, I can't believe that was me. Like it's been difficult. I mean, now the Joe of a year later to relate to that girl. Like, that girl was so afraid, that girl was so meek, that girl was so small, and now I've kind of hit like a little bit of empowerment now, like Nikia says, throat chakra open, I'm loud, I'm outspoken, and I couldn't be before. It's kind of like he had like a hold on me, and so I'm like, I can't believe that I was that person, because prior to him I was never that, but for 8 years I was, and it's scary that I was there.
And thinking about that from, I guess, a self-compassion lens, she was doing what she had to do to survive, I guess, and taking care of your daughter. It sounds like you were doing what you had to do to keep yourself safe. And she eventually evolved into who you are today. So while she may have been, meek in some circumstances, you had to go through those experiences to get to who you are today. And honoring, I guess, maybe opening the lens of how you think about her as well.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, and that goes into like the shame piece of it, that kind of keeps us there. You kind of say, well, how could I let myself? But like you're saying, you weren't that person before. That could happen to anybody. And it's not your fault or anyone's fault, victim's fault that get it. It's our responsibility to get out of it, but anyone could fall into it, essentially. So I think that you did what you had to do in that moment. And I honor and respect all the strength you had to get out of it, but I still hold space and honor the Joe that survived it as well.
I definitely have to continue to remind myself to be compassionate for myself, like have that compassion for myself to say, yeah, you were that person because of that circumstance. You were surviving, so that's why you were this. And also, and for a very long time, I didn't even know that I was in an abuse relationship, and that was another thing. I didn't even understand how abused I was until I found myself on that floor when I got up and, and I was like, okay, this person is really dangerous. And I need to get out of here for the sake of my daughter and mine's life. But prior to that, honestly, I confused that abuse for love. I was just like, oof. But I'm being...
Because it can be so systematic. It's not all at once. It can be so like building upon each little thing that,
But compassion is definitely so. I love that, the title of your book, because it's like the mindfulness and the compassion, because I think that us as victims, I feel sometimes even shameful of being a victim. Kind of like, how did I let myself get in there?
How do we reclaim? Because the shame should not be on us. What are some ways that we can reclaim ourselves and shed that shame?
So Brene Brown, I know, have you guys heard of her? She's like a shame expert, and she talks about guilt is when you feel bad about something you did, and shame is when you feel bad about who you are. And that's why it's harder to work through. And that can sometimes go back to even before we were in those abusive relationships. And the way I work with it a lot of times is getting down to those limiting beliefs that we developed either because of childhood experiences or, negative adult experiences. Could be beliefs like I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. And those can kind of, be planted before we even go through these relationships, can sometimes contribute to us getting into some of these relationships. And so once we have the grounding tools kind of work and being able to, bring ourselves back to the present moment as a skill, I like to work on tools for some of those limiting beliefs, like knowing when they show up and being able to like restructure our brains to when they do show up or when we realize that they're showing up, pivot ourselves to the other positive beliefs that we have about ourselves as well. So the shame piece can kind of be triggered in various moments, but we also have very empowering beliefs, many of us do, about ourselves as well. It's just about bringing those back to the forefront when the shame is triggered, so to speak. So I don't like to think about getting rid of the shame. I like to just try to have a new relationship with it, of like noticing when it shows up, not judging ourselves for feeling it, and then realigning ourselves with our more positive beliefs about ourselves as well. Because the more you focus on getting rid of, this is the manifestation part of it coming up. The more you focus on getting rid of something, the more it comes out of it. It's like like attracts like. So what do you want to feel instead of that shame? You want to feel empowered. You want to feel strong. You want to feel accomplished, proud, all those things. So yeah, it's about knowing your triggers for it, not making yourself feel bad about it, and then having like mantras or affirmations or other beliefs about yourself that you can remind yourself of in those moments.
Yeah, my daughter, Nikia's always been really big on affirmations. So I've been taking whatever like little, gems that I get from friends and give it to my daughter. My daughter's 12. And just the other day, her dad sent me a picture of her bathroom mirror, which I'll share with Nikia. And it was her affirmations. Oh, when I tell you, I mean, right now, the hairs on my arms just stood up because they were
oh my God, I love that.
She wrote like the biggest thing that was on there. She's like, I am worthy, and it was just like,
oh,
you go, Zen.
Yeah. And she's so young. I mean, imagine how that's going to affect her, going forward, just to have that at your base, at your foundation.
I want to make sure the things that she says to herself are positive, because unfortunately, she also got some of that heat from our abuser of saying these negative things. And I've noticed throughout this year, I've had to, kind of reprogram her, kind of like I'm reprogramming my own mind and saying those things were not right. Those things were never okay. Never feel, this or this about yourself. And so I'm super proud of her for putting in her affirmations, and she's going right on the right path, because I'm hearing everything you're saying. I'm like, woo, all right now.
Yeah. And good job to you, Mama. That's amazing to be doing that. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that feels really good. That feels, there has been, there can be so much darkness. That brings so much light. That, hearing about your daughter's affirmations, of course, it brings like a huge smile to my face, because she's a gem. She's a little angel. She's a light. Yeah, that's when I think about what we are passing on to the next generation. I get all warm and fuzzy. I'm so happy. I'm so thankful, because we are giving them tools and hope, something that growing up we didn't necessarily have. I didn't necessarily have. My parents knew that I needed something. I needed some sort of outlet. However, I know that they, specifically my mom, did the best that she could, because, to be completely honest, I witnessed abuse as a child. And so when you spoke, Tiffany, about that earlier, and how certain things in our past can almost make us more susceptible to those abusive relationships, or the narcissist, it brought me back to, okay, how was I already open to this as a child? How was I already open to this as an adult heading into this relationship that obviously at first did not appear to be abusive? It was very sweet, and he was kind and would give, the shirt off his back to a stranger. And then it's started to creep in. And I unknowingly gave up my control and gave up my my will. So when I remember sitting in my apartment, and I had that strong woman mentality, like, I'm so strong, how could this happen to me? And wait, I've been through this before. This is a very
Yeah.
familiar feeling.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So,
And doing that conscious work to kind of think about that, to like have insight into how you've felt those things before, you've had those experiences before, can be tools for, in the future to not repeat those patterns. But I think especially when we're younger or when we haven't done that work just yet, it can be harder to recognize that, yeah, I have felt this same feeling before. I had to walk on eggshells with my mom, or I witnessed, like for me, as probably both situations with my dad, I witnessed domestic violence in my home, or, love was conditional, or we kept a lot of secrets in our family. It doesn't always have to be, the exact same situation, but it feels similar, like you were saying. It's very poignant the way you're saying. So we have those childhood experiences that make us develop beliefs about ourselves and the world and other people. And then we have assumptions based on that. And then we have like thoughts and behaviors based on that. And sometimes we're seeking these relationships to sort of replay it, or to maybe I can get it right this time. Maybe I'll be good enough this time. Maybe I'll be lovable in this, really unconsciously. I can fix what I went through in the past through this relationship. Which, usually doesn't end up well for us, but it's an unconscious process that we go through.
That is so real. That hit home, not only with like, me too, seeing like toxic relationships in my past with my parents and, family members, but also me now, this new, I guess, version of Joe. So I'm not ready to be in the dating realm, but I feel like if I'm not completely and fully healed, I will fall back into something like that.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean completely fully healed?
I don't know.
Healed?
I mean, I guess I wouldn't be fully healed, but it's that strong woman's mentality. I kind of just want to be up and out of this feeling and the triggering and all that. I want to be done with this so I can go ahead and start my next chapter just free of it. And I know that I can't. I know that I won't be fully done with it. It's a part of me. It's a chapter, a page in my book that I just can't tear out. But I also do feel like it kind of like it haunts me in a way. So I'm like a little bit unprepared and not ready to like develop another relationship. I'm like, is that going to feed into something else? Am I more susceptible to falling into, the hands of a narcissist? Kind of like a person that came from an abusive relationship with their parents, like seeing that they're more susceptible to fall into something like that. Like, is that?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You're saying you want to process it enough and feel like you have enough, I guess, standing almost, that you don't fall back into a similar
you don't know how many people tell me, get back on that horse, girl. I'm like, you know what? That horse will stay right over there. I am working on this. No, thank you, horse.
Yeah, because we want to break the cycle.
I'm ready. I'm like, I need to get it going. I'm like, hold on a second. Work on this.
I have two sides of that. I hear you on one side, and I think that, things like being in therapy, doing the conscious work that it sounds like you ladies are already doing are great. Finding some footing of a solid foundation of taking care of oneself and feeling, I guess, healed and whole in some capacity. The other side of that is being in relation is also very healing in and of itself. Like learning to put those boundaries up, know when it's not the right person, and even in relationship that is healthy, being able to work through those triggers. Those are all things you can't really do by yourself. It has to come through being in a relationship with someone else. Because you're not just going to walk around triggering yourself. But for instance, I used to be in a physically abusive relationship, and I've had had my toxic situationships through after that. And so meeting my husband, who was in a healthy relationship, there were lots of things that came up that I had to stay the course to work through. My initial reaction was to always, run when things get hard and not kind of work through it, because I didn't want to be triggered, or, that's that fight or flight response, or you have that sort of negative belief men are trash and that sort of thing. And so those things can push you to maybe not work through things. But learning ruptures and repairs, that's what we call them in the psychology world, is how you find healing. It's also how you relationship, if you can do it in a healthy way, you bond more to the person, you get more secure attachment. Even research shows that if you have a secure relationship for 5 years, you can correct any insecure attachment you had as a child. And you can only do that in a healthy relationship by, sticking in it. If you have your own sources of, support and therapy, or ways to do conscious work. So I always tell people, do that work to feel safe, but then also give yourself a chance to practice all the work that you're doing and put it into work in a relationship when you're ready, of course.
The streets are wild.
I feel you. I was out there.
The streets are wild. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of men out there that need to do that work, and I seem to be meeting all of them
that are not doing it. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And I guess that's part of the process too, is like knowing when it's a full stop now. Like, I think Maya Angelou, have you guys seen that interview she did about Oprah talking about keeping your soul pristine? Like, there's a place in yourself that you have to stop and say, no, back up. You are like encroaching on the pristine part of myself that I need to go to when I meet God, I think was what she said. So like being able to know when people are having the boundaries to not let people encroach on that space in yourself as well.
Oof. I know. Same.
Hello, Maya. All right,
that's a gem drop.
Yeah, she definitely.
Wow. Okay. I'm taking a moment to let it all sink in. Tiffany, there were so many times in what you were saying that was like, oh.
Sorry.
And that's exactly what we need.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we need.
Yeah, because sometimes, like for a really long time, I felt alone in my feelings. And talking to other people and hearing their stories, or hearing like a point of view of a professional, it like gets me out of that headspace that, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. This is real. Mm-hmm. And these are the steps that I need to do to heal. And it's just okay for me to feel the way that I do. So, yeah.
Definitely. 100%.
I want to be a hermit at times, and, be in a cocoon to protect myself. Yet I have definitely heard many times through meditation and yoga that it is in relationships and in relations that I'm able to work through these things and put these things in practice. But of course, I'm like, oh no, that means I have to talk to people. That means, oh gosh, I'm just not.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's hard though.
It is. Really hard. It is hard. It is challenging. Yet I know that in order to get to where I want to be, I have to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to a sermon the other day, and in the sermon, the preacher was talking about Spirit's promise to us, yet we have to yield to the process. And this is the process. And there
Mm-hmm.
are big parts of me that are like, oh, don't do it. Can I just jump and leap over and get to the other side? It's like, no, I have to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
leads me into, you are a very powerful manifester, Tiffany. I mean, goodness. And when I'm scrolling through social media and I see your posts, and there are parts of me that are like, oh, she's calling you out. She's calling you out.
Oh.
And like I said, I need that. I appreciate that. And
Mm.
as with everything that we've been talking about, and as survivors, we want to manifest the life that we dream of. And
Mm-hmm.
it can feel like you have this huge roadblock or roadblocks between your current life and the life that
Right.
you want. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
approach that as a survivor?
I think accepting it all, embracing it all, and really taking those life challenges like surviving trauma and knowing that it was sent here to make you into the woman that manifests those things. Like the husband, let's say it's a husband that, or fulfilling love that someone is trying to manifest after surviving that love needed you to go through that to shape you into who the woman that has manifested those things. So not just looking at it like I survived, but or God put that on your path to mold you, and really doing the conscious work to understand what is the lesson that you're supposed to get out of that. How am I supposed to change? What was I supposed to acknowledge on my side? And what can I take with me as I continue on in my journey? And then being aware of it. So it could shape you in the sense of, when one of those types of people are coming into your life. It could shape you in the sense of, you step back from emotionally babysitting in the future with a partner. Not saying you necessarily leave them, or it's a bad thing that they call that out of you, but putting up a boundary, whether that be with parents or, friends, or in that relationship, like, this is not my role to take care of you emotionally right now. I can be here to support you, but I'm going to let you figure that out. And maybe that's something that's going to be a crucial part of a healthy relationship for you in the future. So it can be different for different people, but whatever it is for you, holding on to that and valuing that, being proud of that sort of thing is one piece. And then I would also say, going back to those limiting beliefs, doing the conscious work to figure out which one of those beliefs were at play during that relationship, so that you can continue to not let it hold you back from attracting what you want in the future. Because abundance wants you, freedom wants you, love wants you, God already has your path written. Sometimes we can get in our own way of getting there, and kind of thinking about, how will I know if that's showing up for me again? Like I said, in my own relationship, I've struggled with the negative belief, I'm not enough. And that can create different scenarios in like everyday life that you don't even think are that deep. But it's like, it comes back to, like, if you notice, like I notice I'm triggered, okay, what's going on here? He just asked me to pick up that, or why I didn't make the bed, or pick up that piece of clothes. It's like, for me, it's like I'm in my, caveman brain, I'm fighting to prove that I am good enough so I don't get in trouble like I did as a kid. And my husband's just asking me to pick up a shirt. So can I, obviously not always in the moment, but come back to those situations and relationships and own my piece, or recognize other people's piece, those kinds of things. So I would say the allowing, like basically embracing the challenge, learning the lessons, getting at the limiting beliefs. And then there's this whole other piece of vibrating high. And that's where the self-love comes in. I have 4 things that I tell my people I work with that are manifesting things to do every single day. Self-love and self-compassion is the first thing. So you should always be doing something that encompasses that every single day, whether that's journaling, whether that's saying something you like about yourself, whether that's getting on the treadmill, something that shows your self-love. Appreciation is the second thing. So gratitude, some sort of gratitude practice to vibrate high, to feel good. Pleasure, so something fun, something that brings a smile, whether that's Netflix, whether that's a hot cup of tea, whether that's like watching the sunrise. And then, so spam, self-care, pleasure, appreciation, mindfulness, which you guys already know that that's going to be a big piece. So what can I do to ground myself in the present moment every single day? That could be maybe being mindful with your children, family time, like being present in the moment, not on your phone, meditation, mindfully eating, mindfully showering, anything that can bring you into the present moment, because sometimes when we're always in the future, that brings us anxiety. If we're always thinking about the past, that brings us depression. So anything that you can do to every single day, maybe your whole, so if you think about your emotional experience or your vibe as a pie, and you, let's say you have some pieces of, maybe for a trauma survivor, PTSD, or anxiety, we don't want that to be your whole emotional experience all day. So if you could bring in other pieces in the pie to complement that, so not focusing on getting rid of that per se, but what else can we bring in? So that could be, you know, the appreciation, the pleasure, the fun, the mindfulness, to help your overall mood. Because when you're coming from that space, you attract more of it versus constantly focused on getting rid of things. And then the last piece of the manifestation piece is that aligned action. So you might have to, you know, let's say someone is trying to manifest love, put yourself out there, like doing things that move you closer to what you value. And you might have to carry some of that fear in the background. So it may never fully go away. You might always have like a little bit of anxiety when you think of opening yourself again, but can you hold that as you move closer to doing things that move you closer to what you want in life as well. And you'll find, not intentionally, that anxiety will get less and less, but can you, even if it's just friends, go have, get on a meetup or, go on a hiking club, whatever the case may be. What can you do that brings you closer to that value of love? So it's vibrating high, believing, and then taking the action. In a nutshell.
Hey, taking notes.
All of them. I actually have a quick question. So I mean, in my past relationship, I was never like allowed, I guess, to want more from myself. I was always told exactly what I needed to do, and I just had to follow suit. So this sense of like manifesting is new to me, and like wanting these things for myself. And I've encountered and been around amazing people that do this for themselves. But everyone has a different process. Like I have some friends or, that will manifest by getting a board and putting like literal pictures and keeping that next to their bed, or journaling. Is there like a process that you go through personally on how you manifest? I mean, like for a rookie manifestor.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a process. So the way I explained it was not very like formulaic. And so the vision board piece, the journaling piece is part of it, but it's the process that I do a little bit further down the line. So I'll say it again, but like maybe more in like a 101 kind of way. So if you imagine, getting to what you want is like a roadmap, like a journey almost. So if you think about it as like, let's say you want to manifest going to the beach, it's all about that journey to getting to the beach. It's not actually the beach that's going to make you happy. It's about the journey to get there. So I always tell people your manifestation is not going to make you happy, but being happy is what's going to help you manifest what you want. And so as a psychologist, my tools are to help people to really develop the mindset, because if you can develop that manifestation mindset, that abundance mindset, you're going to attract what you want naturally, and you'll be happy in the process. So it starts with very potent, what you said, knowing what you want. So, and your intention, like, what is it that you want for your life, and what are your values in life that support it? So, like, some of my top values are spirituality, love, family, achievement, learning, all those things. And so with that in mind, making your intentions for your life, I like to start with like big picture goals, like where do you want to be in 5 years? And then kind of reverse engineering that process. And then, so I usually teach people in the 3 ways to get to after they make their intention. So joyful spirit. So it's the actions, like what we talked about, to be happy every day. And then thought work. So the actions is the easier piece. I usually start there, and then doing the thought work. So working with any negative thoughts that come up. And there can be various tools to do that. And then the second piece, once you have that foundation of you're vibrating high, you're ready to kind of move on, is to do the belief work. And that's where things like vision boards come in, or scripting. So your mind is already kind of wrapping itself around having what you want. And the most important thing is when you look at your vision board or your scripting. So scripting is basically you're writing in the present tense as if you already have what you want, kind of tricks your mind into believing it, is you allow yourself to really feel those emotions. So when let's say you want to manifest love, when you're sitting there with your husband and your daughter, how would you feel, at Thanksgiving? Or how would you feel having those things that you're looking out on your vision board and allowing yourself to feel it, and only doing those things when you're in a good mood, because like attracts like. And then the second piece of the believing, so that's kind of like the abundance thing. And then the second half of that is really allowing. So taking life's challenges, accepting them, learning from them, letting go and letting God. So if you're a more controlling person, I'm laughing because that's me. That's more of the work, is like trusting and believing that things will happen. And then the last piece of that is aligned action, which is basically doing things to align with your spirit, like prayer, meditation, because your spirit is where your desires come from. That's your higher self. So whatever you can do to align with that, it's going to help you attract what you want. And then the second align action piece is like those like SMART goals. So when I was manifesting my husband, I had a reminder.
Girl, tell me how you did it. Writing step 1.
I have reminders in my phone.
Because I told you the streets are wild. Okay.
I love that. I had reminders as part of like the action piece in my phone to like, not that I'm not a nice person, but to like be nice, like do something nice for him, because he's so nice. I'm more of like I'm a type A personality, and sometimes that can show up in my relationship. So I would have things like do something nice for JV, or just little actions that I could take, like date night, making sure I kept up with date night, those kinds of things, because I can get wrapped up in work. But making sure that you're actually in the physical world doing things that are bringing you closer to what you want specifically. Yeah. And then rinse and repeat. Be happy, believe, and take action, essentially.
We're taking
notes. After this, I'm going to manifest my husband, my house, my rock hard body.
Yeah. I feel like you already are in that process, just doing the work that you're doing now, leaving that situation. You're helping other people, so you're like doing things out of your comfort zone. You believed enough in yourself that you deserved more. You're already on that roadmap. So a lot of it also is intuition and trusting yourself in that process as well, because people have been doing this for years and they don't know what it's called or what they're doing. It just has been happening kind of naturally in their life. And I think both of you are shining lights. I mean, I don't know that much about you, Joe, but I can feel that. And Nikia, I know you as well. So for sure, you're already in the process.
See, there's hope, girl. There's hope.
Because sometimes I'm like, is there? I know there's a light. There's a light at the end of that tunnel. I can see it. Sometimes I get close and I see it fully. Sometimes, things happen and it's just like a little dot, but it's there. I'm definitely working through it. My daughter, I've been working, like I said, manifesting Ricky. So my daughter and we sat down a few weeks ago with all the women in our family, and we wrote intentionally the things that we want in present tense. But we burned it. Nice. I don't know. Somebody told me it was the thing to do. I don't know if it was my mom or grandma, somebody. But we kept the memory of those things.
Kind of like releasing it.
Just like, I'm putting it into the universe. Here you go. So.
I love that. And I'm a vision board. I know Oprah mentioned lately she doesn't vision board anymore. And so people were like, should we not vision board? Vision board? Everyone has their own preference. And she used it for years, while she was making billions. So I think they're still valuable. And I think it's just about, what do you prefer, and leaning into what your spirit is telling you. If you're a visual person and you like being creative and doing that, I say you should lean into it. If you like writing, it's just about what you like to do and what makes you feel good. Yeah. Your vibe is your guide. Yeah.
Tiffany, you have a new book out, your 5-minute self-love journal.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's a journal, basically. So my publisher came to me and was like, so we would like you to do another book. What would you like to do? I'm known for really practical techniques. Like anyone that's been in my program, I have a program, Dream Life Academy, they say, oh, this is so practical. Like I kept hearing that. And so I've been just leaning into what can I do that's really accessible, that anyone, even if they don't know about self-love, could do. And that's what the journal is all about. It's all about really practical things that you can get in and out, 5 minutes a day, journal about to increase your self-love and your self-compassion. A lot of it is based in psychology. Obviously, I'm a psychologist, so that's going to be in there. But the main goal is how can we increase our self-compassion? How can we cultivate love for ourselves? In an easy way, something that we can do easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the journey to self-love is, there are twists and turns and there are bumps and all of that. So the fact that it is a practical guide is amazing.
Yeah, for me, it makes a lot of sense because, life can get so busy, and sometimes doing things like, oh, let me journal about self-love, it can not always be at the top of our to-do list. So if we can make it easy, 5 minutes, and my publisher was on board, that's kind of what we were set out to do. And hopefully people find it easy as well.
I think so. Tiffany, we are so grateful. We are so grateful to have you. We are so grateful for your words, your encouragement, calling us out and taking things up and laying it out so that we have ways, we have tools, we have things that we can do to recenter ourselves. Because I know I need it. And Joe being my partner on this, because it's the hope that things will get better and the roadmap to how to get there.
Yeah, this conversation alone has already made me feel personally, because I had some triggering moments that just a few days ago, just feeling, to be a little bit more kind to myself. Just this conversation alone was just like, okay, you're okay. You're on the right path. Be kind. Be mindful.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I love that. I'm
just
happy.
This little bit.
Thank you guys. I'm happy to have these conversations, and I wish there were more like it. So I'm very thankful to you guys.
Thank you, Tiffany. You have some resources for us. So please do share. We are open ears.
I did just want to share a couple of books that have been helpful to other folks that I've worked with that are survivors. So I think financial literacy is very important because sometimes women stay. You may know that you need to leave, but you don't have the finances or feel stuck in that way. And I know he can be cheesy sometimes, but the book is really good. There's a book by Tony Robbins called The Money Game that's really good. And just getting like a very practical strategy of how to not only save, but invest and to maybe either get out of a situation or build your own situation after maybe leaving a marriage or something like that. And then there's a book called Walking on Eggshells. I forget who it's by, but essentially the book is about a woman who grew up with a mom who had what's called borderline personality disorder, which a lot of people sometimes think that they're abusers or narcissists, but borderline personality can be a really hard personality disorder to struggle with also. And I think it could be helpful to break that cycle called Walking on Eggshells. And then anything Brene Brown. If you struggle with any sort of shame from being in an abusive relationship, or you feel like that contributed to cycles of abuse, then I check out just Brene Brown. She's on Instagram, but she also has a really powerful Netflix documentary on shame that's helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Very helpful. Yes, Brene Brown I've watched that Netflix.
So good.
It's very, very, very powerful, very helpful, enlightening, and just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay.
I hope it helps someone. Yeah.
Yes. Anything else, ladies, before we tag out?
I mean, the resources that we always give at the end, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 800-799-7233. And of course, the suicide hotline, which is 988.
Tiffany, where can we find you? We have just a few more minutes we want to squeeze in. Where can we find you? How can we support you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is _Tiffany Shelton. And I'm also on YouTube as Tiffany Shelton. Lots of content on there on self-love and manifestation. And if you have any questions, you can just DM me. I'm happy to talk about all these things. I geek out about these things for sure.
Wonderful. And we try to close this out with something uplifting, some affirmations, and mentioned earlier that you have meditations that I heard years ago that really sparked change in my spirit, in my life. And one of those meditations is about self-compassion. And so I was wondering if you can offer us just some words of affirmation and compassion that we can carry on with us throughout the rest of our day.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. Well, can I set an intention for you guys and your audience, maybe? Okay. So my intention for you is to see your light, to honor your light, and to know not only are you enough, you're more than enough. You're on the right path. God lives inside of you, and you're on the right journey.
Received.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. What a joy. Thank you, guys.
All right, you all. Until next time, thank you for listening to our podcast. And you can go to nikiaphoenix.com for more resources and a link to everything that Tiffany is doing. And, manifest the life that you want, the love that you want for self. Y'all, bye.